Welcome to this Wednesday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest. Couldn't be happier than to have you guys with us as we're starting to get on a little bit of a roll here on the program, especially this week. We gave out what I thought was a little bit of a bold pick yesterday at plus 140 or thereabouts. I don't know what the game eventually went off at, but I had it at plus 140. The Cleveland Guardians, it's football intensity now, and everybody's concentrating on college and pro football, and we get into a lot of that. But you can't ignore what's going on in Major League Baseball, and it got particularly interesting again last night. We had an inclination, and this relates to life more than it does the current analysis and paralysis by mathematical analysis that you get in sports handicapping. There are many people that would say you are crazy to go with gut instinct instead of just going with straight up sabermetrics and all of the different mathematical permutations that people are quoting and citing as they're making their selections now in any degenerate handicapping endeavor. It's Bill James to an exponent of 10, where people are making all these mathematical extrapolations and then telling you, well, this is a reason that you have to do that. Now, you are going against that if you're using any kind of other logic, because the applications that the bookmakers are making clearly give them an advantage, and they are just crunching numbers into a computer. They don't have some guy that goes, hey, I got a funny feeling tonight Cleveland's going to win. Straight up numerology, and this is what you're going against. Maybe with some form of artificial intelligence, you can make the same kind of deductions and be one step ahead of the book. That's possible, but where Billy Walters, in the book that he co-authored with Armin Katayan, the great investigative reporter, I spoke with Armin about that book when it came out. Billy Walters, the world's greatest gambler. And Armin said that this guy never used anything but straight up numbers in his handicapping endeavors. That's all it was about. And then it also involved going out and finding the best price and middles and all these other things that would give him a chance to reduce the natural advantage that the house had by charging you what is possibly one of the ugliest words in the English language when it comes to betting, and that is vig, the vigorish, the juice. That's where you're getting beat. Most people, if you just followed any form of logic, odds and probability, you have a 50-50 chance of winning virtually any bet that you make. But that's not good enough, because you have to hit it somewhere in the range of 58, 59%, which adds to the degree of difficulty, an element that probably leads to, unfortunately, a lot of people going broke and having a gambling problem. So we went in open defiance of this yesterday because, and I may do it again today. I'm tempted to just continue to jump on this bandwagon and pound this theory that when things go wrong, I'm a big Blues fan. When things go wrong with you, it tends to happen in bunches. And I've always been a big fan of the monumental baseball collapse. I believe it was in 1964, Philadelphia Phillies that were managed by Gene Mauch, where they had a phenomenal lead, seemed to be insurmountable. Late in the season, they ended up blowing it in the chance at the National League pennant. And Mauch infamously threw spare ribs all around the locker room in a fit of anger, a fit of rage after another difficult loss during that stretch. And what happened? Did that help the situation? No, just compounded it, made it even worse. And that's what's happening right now with the Detroit Tigers. A seemingly insurmountable lead. I mean, this team was cruising. They had one little blip somewhere, I would say July, where their double-digit lead in the American League Central started to dwindle down, and it got down to like 6 games. But the team that was chasing them in that division and now has caught them in a dead heat, a veritable dead heat, same record. They do hold the advantage, the Cleveland Guardians, in the season series. So they now find themselves in a position where they are atop the American League Central, with the Detroit Tigers now trying to cling on to a wild card spot. Now, that could reverse today. We'll see. The teams go head-to-head again today. But in your lifetime, when things are going wrong, they tend to go wrong in bunches. And that's what's happening with Detroit right now. And that was really the key factor in trying to make a determination as to who was going to win yesterday's game. Plus, on top of that, you were going to have to do what seems to be virtually impossible and beat Skubal. But he doesn't always go the distance. While he may throw you 7 shutout innings and strike out 12 batters in the process, eventually the Tigers, unfortunately for them, are going to have to go to their bullpen And that was pretty much the case in yesterday's ball game. After leading late in the ball game, they end up losing 5-2. We cash at plus 140, strictly based on the idea that things go wrong in bunches. Your car breaks down. You find out that you have no money in the bank. The mechanic that you trust is not in town, so you have to go to some schmuck that rips you off. Your girl leaves you at the same time. You lose your job. It tends to come in just swift fashion when things are going south. And that's what's happened to the Detroit Tigers. So looking at today's game, in the Major League Baseball on a Major League Baseball slate and that includes a lot of important games. You do have the Tigers throwing Flaherty out there, one of the few guys with a losing record in that rotation, 8-14, and he is going against the Indians, who are throwing a guy with an 11-11 record. So you're getting a small price in this one, I think, or you might be getting even money. But we're going to say that the losing streak continues, and our pick today is going to be the Guardians once again to beat the Tigers and open up a one-game lead in the AL Central and put the Tigers in even further jeopardy of falling out of the playoffs. A lot of stuff happened on that front yesterday, so I don't know how much that amplifies your interest in betting baseball. Toronto a loser yesterday. The Yankees a winner. They came back and beat the White Sox. Toronto now one up in the American League East. The Yankees in the process clinched a wild card spot, and so Toronto finds itself in an okay position as far as the playoffs go. But maybe with a chance to fall out of the American League Eastern Division lead, which just about, a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, you thought that they had already wrapped this thing up. So the Yankees playing some of their best baseball right now, all of a sudden come in as a hot ball club. You know they're probably going to be largely overbet as a contender to win the World Series, but playing very, very well, and now have crept within one game in the American League East of the Toronto Blue Jays. Cleveland, as we said, now in a dead heat, but holds the series advantage over the Detroit Tigers. Houston is fighting for their playoff life all of a sudden, as they are just one game up in their wild card chase in the American League. The Dodgers losers yesterday. The Padres win, so that gap is one and a hook. And interesting to see the Mets also staggering around. They got a win. They had a comeback win yesterday, and they are just one up on a pair of contenders. It's interesting. Two of the teams that are alive, very much alive, for the wild card chase. You have the Arizona Diamondbacks just one game back of the Mets, along with the Cincinnati Reds, who were losers yesterday, to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And so both those teams one game behind the Mets. Cincinnati holds the edge if they end up in a dead heat. I'm not sure what the status of the Diamondbacks and the Mets head-to-head would be, or Diamondbacks and Cincinnati. But nonetheless, you have three teams in there, and both the Diamondbacks and the Guardians still hanging around in this wild card chase, very much alive, in spite of the fact that around a trade deadline and throughout most of the season, the Diamondbacks were unloading some of their better players all year long early and still find themselves contenders, and the Guardians were doing the same thing. So a lot of interesting developments in Major League Baseball, not the least of which was our winner yesterday as we bounced back from what looked like a real tough spot and caught the Guardians 5-2 over the Detroit Tigers. Going to go with them again today and hope that we can win two in a row. We were also a winner on Monday night's game with the Detroit Lions, and Dan Campbell going for everything on fourth down as the Lions looked really, really sharp once again in beating the Baltimore Ravens on the road to move to 2-1. A lot of stuff going on college football. We'll examine some of these games tomorrow with Mike Jones. Mike Jones, by the way, a brilliant scoop on the college football news front. He calls me yesterday and he says, I got a scoop for you. And at that time, I had already finished up the shows that I was doing. So I wasn't really able to do too much with the information except give it to a couple of friends of mine because I don't know exactly how this is going to impact play. It could go either way. Mike Gundy has been at Oklahoma State 21 years. He's had 11 10-win seasons. He's best known for that I'm a man speech. I'm a man. Yes, I am, and I can, and I love you so. When he was defending his quarterback, and he said, hey, take me on. I'm a man. I'm 40. And that was probably his most significant moment. Wasn't quite the unraveling that we saw yesterday in front of the United Nations by a certain president of the United States, which, once again, I mean, you talk about bizarre Tylenol and autism one day, and then this nonsense that was spewing out yesterday. I wish he had given out a couple of picks because I would have gone against him because he certainly looked like a complete loser in front of all of the world leaders that were in attendance there. I wonder how those interpretations went by some of the statements he made. But Gundy, of course, known for that speech, that wild meltdown kind of speech there at a press conference after a ball game, telling some reporter that he should take him on instead of the player, which I don't know. As wigged out as the speech was, I thought it was at least admirable that he was defending the player. Gundy was a fixture there at Oklahoma State, had a lot of success, but not of late. Got clobbered, 69-3 by Oregon, who has a big ball game coming up this week against Penn State. So Mike calls me, Mike Jones, who you see on the show. He'll be with us tomorrow. And he says, I got inside information. Mike Gundy's going to be fired today. They are flying in some booster, and they just rearranged this guy's contract, restructured his contract. So what was a very, very modest $1 million buyout clause became a $15 million buyout proposition, making you think there was little chance that the Oklahoma State alumni and boosters were going to take up the role of T. Boone Pickens and come up with this kind of cash to get rid of this guy. But sure enough, Mike said they were flying in a guy with an attaché full of cash. He was going to provide the buyout money for the contract of Mike Gundy. And lo and behold, later on in the evening, we get the news that Mike Gundy was canned. So does that inspire Oklahoma State to play a little better football in his honor and in the wake of his coaching career there, the aftermath, when they go against Baylor? The line is pretty significant, 21 on a hook, Baylor favored on the road against Oklahoma State, an Oklahoma State team that also lost at home to Tulsa, which I think is something that hadn't happened since like 1951, the year I was born. So you're going back like 74 years since that particular occurrence took place. So having a really bad year. Seems like they just don't have the players. Gundy was complaining about that NIL and the transfer portal has ruined him. He didn't have the money to compete. And now he's got $15 million to enjoy himself. I don't know that he comes back and coaches again on the collegiate level. There figure to be some more jobs open, maybe even more illustrious type of jobs than Oklahoma State. Thought in general the guy had an excellent career there. I don't think you can take that away from him. A lot of people thought with the mullet and everything that he was rubbing them the wrong way. But he gets his $15 million, and Mike Jones comes up with a scoop yesterday as we had Mike Gundy fired after 21 years at the helm there at Oklahoma State. A lot of good college games. Curious to see what people think about them. Formulate an opinion. We'll have some opinions on these tomorrow. Florida State and Virginia has some Florida State fans scared for some reason. The line is relatively short. That game is coming up on Friday night. Florida State, I believe, is now a 7-point favorite over Virginia on the road. A little bit difficult to judge. I mean, their win over Alabama was beyond impressive. Castellanos, their quarterback, the transfer from BC, has not even played complete games as they put 143 points on the board against two cupcakes last couple of games. Is that good enough to make you think that they cover a touchdown against Virginia on the road? I'm inclined to think yes. I mean, without even knowing that much and having a lot of detail on Virginia, we'll have to do a little research on this and see what we come up with. But the way Florida State is performing offensively, and with Castellanos, you could have caught him at more than 25-1 to begin the season, but 25-1 as recently as the aftermath of that Alabama win to win the Heisman Trophy. And if you jumped on that, yeah, you might be feeling pretty good about that. Carson Beck, who I think was a second choice at like 9-1, he might have dropped off a little bit after this performance against the Florida Gators, which I attended. Was unimpressive to me. I mean, certainly underwhelming. It's a kid you could root for. You like to see a guy come back from an injury. Georgia clearly thought that with Gunnar Stockton that they were in better shape than they would have been with the thought to be shredded elbow of Carson Beck at the helm. Beck really had plenty of time to throw the football in his game against the Gators on Saturday night here at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, and was really unimpressive. He had, I would think you would have to consider, been sort of lucky with some of these circus catches that a nondescript group of Hurricane receivers were making on his behalf. And otherwise, he might have been throwing a series of hideous picks so far this year. They did beat Notre Dame. They did beat the Florida Gators, who were ranked at one time. The Gators have no offense whatsoever with Lagway. And I would imagine, I don't know, maybe they even shut him down and bring in a backup quarterback. We'll see what transpires there. Billy Napier, also very much on the Ed Ogeron hot seat. Not sure what his strategies are going to be. You tend to, sometimes you'll see, I don't know that he's going to panic. Sometimes you'll see that happen, but there are people involved with the Gator program that believe their backup quarterback is better than Lagway. And having witnessed what transpired on Saturday night firsthand, I don't know that you could do any worse than Lagway did. A very celebrated quarterback coming into the season. He threw the 5 picks against LSU, cost them that ball game, and did absolutely squadooch in this game against the Miami Hurricanes, who I think are vastly overrated. They'll have to prove it to me that they're worthy of that number 2 ranking they had in the Associated Press poll, because I did believe, as I said, that was an underwhelming performance against the Gators. Again, afflicted and affected by the Cristobal factor, where you have a team by the jugular that you should bury, that is no threat to you offensively whatsoever. Your defense is manhandling their offense. And instead of just jumping on it and jamming it down their throats like Jimmy did with Notre Dame many years ago, as Ara Parsegian was falling out of the booth and crying literally on the air to Brent Musburger, oh, he's running up the score, he's running up the score. Jimmy still denies that, by the way, if you saw him before the Notre Dame game this year. But if you ever had a chance to just jump on a guy and score a knockout punch in the first half, it was this game that Miami played against Florida. No threat whatsoever come from Florida. They put no pressure on Miami. They were not really getting any pressure on the quarterback, and yet all they did was run the ball up the middle the entire time. And they found themselves in a dogfight in the third quarter, as they were only leading 13-7. And following a Carson Beck pick, they were in a position where they actually could have been trailing in a game they were dominating. And I attribute that to coaching. And Mario Cristobal's conservative approach to offense. He just kept running the ball up the middle, very predictable, unimaginable. Hard to picture them being the number 2 team in the country. They're on a bye, and then we'll get the real test. Of course, we'll have the benefit of having a result of Florida State playing Virginia to see if they're for real. But I can see a great deal of difficulty if Florida State prevails and looks even close to as sharp as they have against these 2 cupcakes the last 2 weeks, and of course, they're beating Alabama by a couple of touchdowns to open the season. Miami and Florida State in Tallahassee in a couple of weeks, I think could easily go Florida State's way, and you might even find yourself in a position where you're getting points with Florida State in that ballgame. Miami's defense was tough on Florida, but Florida's offense was really just absolutely streamlined to the point where you didn't even know that they had wide receivers on the field. So Florida State and Virginia, one we're going to be watching. Georgia, Alabama, interesting ball game as well. You got Notre Dame and Arkansas, Ole Miss and LSU coming up, Texas A&M and Auburn, Penn State, Oregon. So a lot of juicy stuff to discuss on the college front. And we'll get into those games tomorrow with Mike Jones. And then, of course, in the pros, Mike will be happy about this. I think, people have been predicting this for a while since he was drafted in the first round and made a good account of himself in the preseason. But Brian Daboll, and we keep saying this, is desperation also a source of inspiration? I tend to think when you're desperate, unfortunately, it's not a good position to be in. Now, I don't know if this was a grasp at desperate move. They put Jackson Dart in now. He's going to start the Giants' next ball game. And the Giants, of course, in tough against the L.A. Chargers, who are undefeated and seem to be doing just enough under Jim Harbaugh to win these games. They have toned down what Justin Herbert was doing. They're not asking him to be Hercules. He doesn't have to throw for 500 yards a game. They're running the football, but they're maintaining a steady cadence and kind of a metronomic presence there with the running game. And so the Chargers favored in this ball game against the Giants. Haven't seen if that line has moved since the announcement that Dart is going to start. Russell Wilson couldn't have looked any worse after that brilliant performance throughout most of the ball game in their loss to the Cowboys in overtime, where he threw for over 400 yards. Did nothing in this last ball game that the Giants lost. And so you're thinking they probably don't have that much of a chance going in against the Chargers, even though they're at home. But we'll see if Jackson Dart can ignite a spark like he did in the preseason when he was brilliant and had many people saying that perhaps he should have been the opening day starter. They wait 3 weeks of 0-3 football, and Brian Daboll probably feeling even more heat than he was before the season started. I know a lot of people thought they couldn't afford to get off to an 0-4 start in spite of the degree of difficulty of their schedule. Looks like that's probably going to be the case, but we'll see if Jackson Dart can somehow inspire the Giants to a better offensive performance and they can put up a little bit of a fight. But that's one of the interesting developments on the NFL front. And then you have a bunch of real curious games that are going to be tough to figure. Seahawks and the Cardinals. Cardinals losers last week to the San Francisco 49ers, who have been somewhat of a surprise without Brock Purdy in the lineup, still winning. Eagles and the Buccaneers. Are the Buccaneers really that good? Baker Mayfield, with these last gasp drives, has been brilliant the last couple of weeks, pulling victories out for Todd Bowles, who also seems to be one of those coaches like we talk about with Mike McDaniel, where you look and you see him on the sidelines, and it almost looks like he's detached from the action. But been effective enough to get them off to an undefeated start. And they'll have to handle the Philadelphia Eagles this week. The Rams and the Colts, also an interesting game. And then Ravens and the Chiefs. So a lot of stuff to try and get a beat on here on the NFL slate, the college football slate as well. And we will try and do all of that for you. We did, I don't know if we mentioned this yesterday, would have been stealing material from another guy named Doug Kazarian, who surprisingly has a handle on the WNBA, which I don't know that many people dive into it. And as we've said, it doesn't matter what it is that you're handicapping. It could be Korean baseball. It could be ping pong from the Philippines. If you're able to win consistently, then you would have to say that that is an accomplishment for a degenerate. Why would you be playing into the degree of difficulty you have when you're trying to handicap NFL games and NCAA games? And now baseball, especially tough. The pitchers don't go that deeply in the ball game, so hard to make an equation with the pitching matchups. If you could just constantly hit on something, whether it's the WNBA, I guess the punishment there, and I don't mean to demean the accomplishments of some of these women that have brought women's basketball much more into the spotlight. Certainly, Caitlin Clark was a big spark there, but she hasn't played much this year, if at all. Early in the season, she was bringing in big crowds and audiences. Now she's riding a bench as the Fever have been surprisingly okay without her, the Indiana Fever, and are involved in a semifinal round of the playoffs. But Kazarian was recommending the upset yesterday with Phoenix in their game against Minnesota. They were down 20 points. They were getting 7 and a hook. They end up coming back from the grave in that ballgame, winning it outright in overtime. And so I think we might have suggested that through Kazarian's handicapping in his top place segment in the New York Post. And so hopefully you guys were not so horrified that you turned this thing off. The problem being, like I said, if you bet the ballgame, are you not inclined to want to watch it? I mean, that's where you get the entertainment quotient from. And that's one reason I would find myself reluctant to bet WNBA games, because while I'll tune in for certain portions of them, and I certainly encourage women to get involved in sports, and I'm a big fan of the fact that women are now playing sports on high levels, the quality of basketball, I really struggle to watch the brick fest that I sometimes witness. Every time I tune in a WNBA game, it's brick after brick. I know they put points on the board, but nonetheless, it's a tough watch for me. That doesn't equate out to women's basketball on a pro level to what you see from women when they're playing tennis. I know the men hit the ball harder, and their ground strokes are just absolutely wicked. But if you were going to say what is the most commensurate, what is the greatest example of a replica of a pro sport where the women are as entertaining as the men and are as efficient as the men, you would have to say tennis would be that sport. I don't think golf equates out that way, which you think would be more natural. The guys just hit the ball too far. But women's tennis is always an entertaining view. I'm not sure that the WNBA is for me yet. I don't know how it is for you, but if you're winning money on it, by all means. And we have to hand it to this guy Kazarian for coming up with a good piece of handicap and a 7.5-point dog that wins outright, coming from 20 points behind. All right, we're going to go ahead and stick to it. This could be a kiss of death and end our good positive streak here. But we're going to go ahead with the Guardians again to take over first place. An impossible thing to imagine just a couple of weeks ago. They're selling off players at the trade deadline. They appear to be resigned to the idea they're going to be also Rams this year. Now with a chance to go out and take over first place outright, not just relying on the tiebreaker in the American League Central, where the Tigers are falling apart. When things go wrong, they go wrong in bunches, and I think that's what's happening for the Tigers. So we're going to go ahead and play the Guardians at even money today. No juice, just sitting in there betting 100 to win 100 on the Cleveland Guardians over the Tigers on today's Major League Baseball slate. Good luck, everybody, with all of that. We'll have the scoop man himself came up with this Mike Gundy thing, Mike Jones, on the show tomorrow. And then, unfortunately, we had taken off Friday. Weren't going to be able to make post time for the show, so we won't have the professor and his college football picks. But we'll dive into all kinds of things tomorrow here on the program and hope that you make a score tonight with Cleveland over Detroit on the Major League Baseball slate. I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you on tomorrow's edition of Bury Your Bookie.